Hi, folks. This is more thinking out loud from themes of recent research. There's a risk of repetition here. I'm returning to a theme that's been described and debated in various of these videos and various of our research output in the last 6 months. But I think it's still very significant. For me, it's the most significant, I think, impact of AI in corporate learning. So it bears repetition, or I think it does anyway, but you let me know if you don't think so. So to return to the theme, so the established model for knowledge, for content in the industry, and I suppose generally online, is that the ideas, the value of the content, the idea, the knowledge, the information is wrapped into the format. So we buy the format to access the idea. So if there's a particular theory, piece of evidence, a piece of data, a case history, that's wrapped into a course or a video or a podcast, and you basically you consume the format to access that idea, and that idea then is the creators of the idea are then incentivized by the sort of economic relationship with the format. So you buy the format if it's a book, potentially, or a film, or a course, or you might read the report or the article, listen to the podcast, and then that's funded through various mechanisms, usually advertising subscription or sale or license, access to the license, I guess. So the incentives for sharing are clear, and there's a kind of publisher control in the model. So that's that's how things tend to work, slightly oversimplified. So the value of the content is the ideas in the content, and that's wrapped up, inextricably connected and wrapped into the format of the content. And now that's obviously an emerging model has disrupted that and really completely fragmented it and dispersed it and upended it. So the emerging model is that we access ideas through a chat with an AI of some sort, most typically an LLM chatbot. Obviously ChatGPT being the harbinger of this disruption. So we access ideas through a conversation with the AI. So if you want to find out about a particular theory, a historical event, an idea, parts of a story, a character, whatever it may be, that's now unwrapped and no longer connected with the format of the content. You can just access that idea independent. So it might have been in a video, it might have been in a podcast, it might have been in a book or a report. As long as the AI has had access to that data and training, then the idea is available. So this is, kind of, it's a pretty simple, straightforward idea, I guess. And as I said, it's been described and talked about by many and by me repeatedly, but I want to sort of emphasize it here. And I've started to think a little bit about, what do we gain and what do we lose from this so far? And this is emerging. So, obviously things are changing. So we gain, and as with every digital change, I guess, particularly in terms of the economics of digital content, is we gain convenience as users. So we gain the ability to actually very conveniently find the idea, access the idea, maybe talk about it, ask about it, very, very simply and quickly. So we have access in a way that we would normally associate with digital content, but we have much more flexible and much more precise access. We have now access to choose only what I want, rather than the whole book or the whole movie or the whole course. We have access to that idea, that theory, that theme, that piece of knowledge. At the moment, it's lower cost. That's not going to stand, though. The cost seems to be creeping up. Token maxing, is upon us, or maybe it's past. Who knows? But the cost of AI are rising and prices are increasing. So free access feels like the idea of free access is probably limited, but we'll see. So it's lower cost or free so far. It definitely feels very personal as well. I talk to my my AI chat agent or bot. I talk to Claude or I'll talk to ChatGPT, and it feels like I'm getting exactly what I want. So it feels like quite a personal relationship with the tool to get exactly the ideas that you're after. But what I think is might be important is specialist IP. So specialist content feels like it might be an advantage here. Something that's less easy to replicate and less generic. Feels like there's a kind of commercial advantage to the owners of specialist IP. Again, we'll see. Well, I think I was also thinking about, what do we lose in this, or what do we perhaps, or where the gains are less clear. I think it's a loss. We lose in those ideas. We lose the context, the authorial context. Let's to use a pompous phrase. So why did this person choose, the content creator, the author, the filmmaker, the course author, choose to wrap this idea into this format. What was the context? What was the context of the time, the intent, and where were they going with it? What was the purpose of the idea within the content format? We lose that, and I think that's quite significant. So there's a lot of kind of editorial choice, I think, and editorial intent that's now opaque, or actually just lost, I think. So we lose the story. We lose a story that idea is wrapped in and is part of, and I think in losing stories we lose a lot of that kind of the human connection with the author as well, which I think feels significant. Again, what the implications of that loss are, I don't know. I feel slightly romantic sense of loss to that, but maybe in the end it won't matter. Who knows? The author loses credit and authority, I think, which I do think is significant. So I think that the author, and by author I mean it's shorthand for any kind of content creator, they lose their imprint, their byline, their credit on that, and I think that then erodes a sort of sense of authority as well. So that the authority of expertise feels like it's been eroded here, and we're sort of subsuming that expertise into the technology, into the robotic intelligence. And then that robotic intelligence is an expert in everything. So I think there's a sense of loss of that authority there as well. Creator incentives are very unclear. We're going to make as much money creating tokens for an LLM as we did making videos or writing books, which didn't make any money anyway. So maybe there's not much of a loss. But that creator economy, I think, feels like it's really been hugely disrupted. And that publisher economy, the content creator as organisation, as business, has been disrupted as well. I think there's also a real challenge here for generic IP. I think in our world, in the corporate learning world, there's so much leadership content out there for decades now. Have you really got specialist IP in leadership now? It feels unlikely. Maybe, but maybe not. So I think there's some real challenges there. Anyway, so I think this is the real disruption. For me, this is the core of the disruption in digital learning so far. And I think it warranted repeating for me. It's making me think hard about these gains and losses and the implications. Love to know what you think. If you think this is important or not, let me know in the comments, or just tell me when you see me. Thanks very much.